4 p.m. Okay, any interest to disclose? No members of council, okay. Bylaws. Bylaw 2021-1235 to appoint CAO clerk Mark Figliamini as effective May 26, 2021. I'm looking for a mover and seconder. Ms. Evans?
Yeah, there's an error in both this bylaw and the next one. It should say May 25, not May 26. So if you could adopt the bylaw with that amendment, that would be great.
Okay, so I'm looking for a mover and seconder to move the bylaw appointing Mark Figliamini as CAO clerk effective May 25th, 2021 as amended to me. Councillor Muir and Councillor Tedesco. All in favor? All hands rising, motion is carried. Bylaw 2021-1236. And this is to appoint to rescind or repeal acting clerk Samantha Cameron and to appoint her as deputy clerk effective May 25th, 2021 as amended. I need a mover and seconder. Councillor Park, Councillor McDonald. All in favor? All hands, motion is carried. Okay, item 3 on the agenda is reports from administration. We have user fees. Are there any questions about the user fee review to Ms. Evans? There were 5 recommendations.
I presume we'll get a chance to go over a lot of this with Ms. Evans.
Yep. So if you have any questions right now, you can ask.
I don't think I can put all the questions together right now. Can we get a chance to go over the material? There was quite a bit of material came through. Go over it and digest it.
Do you want to just go each section and then you can ask your question there, but you should have had time to read through it. If there's any questions on the recommendations. Any other councillors have any questions? Oh, Ms. Evans?
Would you like me to just give an overview of the report? Would that be helpful?
Yes, please. And I could probably even note the things that I'm favorable towards, and then there's some areas that I'm kind of wondering if maybe some addition, deletion, compromise, whatever could be done.
Okay, we'll go through it.
Okay, so council, my practice has been in my past life in other municipalities that whenever we bring a budget forward, we also bring the user fee bylaw forward. And this allows us to review it once a year and make sure it's current and also compare it with the budget. So what are we bringing in revenue, and should it be adjusted? Is it appropriate? Is it too high? Is it too low? How is this going to work? So that was the purpose of this report. And your user fee bylaw, the print was very, very small. So to transfer it by scanning didn't work. So I rekeyed it all, which is a lot of work, but it's also good because it let me review every little piece of it and see what kind of things needed to be rejigged. So I've set out in the background some of the legal authority for you to charge user fees for various things. And then I went through the things that we want to add. So the first one is brought forward by Mr. Westerman. It's something I think is easily explainable and of value to the citizens. So right now, if someone wants to dispose of an appliance, they have to first have the Freon removed. which means they have to cart the thing to either Nipigon or Thunder Bay and pay a hefty fee. Then they have to cart it back and put it in our landfill. So there's a lot of work involved and a cost involved for the citizens. So Mr. Westerman found a company that will pick up and dispose of these things without having the freon removed first. He has spoken with the ministry and they're okay with us doing it in terms of our approvals for our landfill site. And I think it's a great service for the citizens. It's a reasonable cost and will help us recover some landfill costs by having a little bit of profit on the cost. So that's our recommendation, that we add this service for the public and that we charge a $50 fee for it. I think that one's pretty easy.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Okay, so municipal tax sale fees, we use a service, a company in Toronto that a lot of municipalities use, and they're a great service. They do all the paperwork, they send it to you with little sticky sign here, and they make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and everything's tickety-boo, so that you're not going to get bitten in the rear end later by not following a process. But of course, they charge a fee for that service. And right now, the user fee bylaw stipulates, okay, we're going to recover real taxes fee, and this is their fee. And it's not, it's less than their fee. So we're not recovering their fee. But we are allowed to just add in collection costs. So if we just add that in instead of specifying the fee, we'll be able to recover whatever the cost is. So if their fees change, we don't have to worry about double checking the bylaw all the time and making sure it changes. You also have a couple of administrative charges that you add along the way to help recover the cost of your staff and the work that they do, which is reasonable. But when you look at the tax sale process, and if you think about it, especially in COVID times when people they're struggling, it's like they're trying really hard to pay their bill. We're already adding the real tax fees on. If we stick another fee on, it just makes it that much harder for them to catch up. But once you get to the end of the process and you're ready to go to tax sale and it's clear that they can't recover, that's the point of time when I would recommend that you add an administrative fee, because it goes on to the tax sale bill. You recover it through the tax sale. It's not going to hurt the person. Well, they're already hurting, of course, but it's not along the process, so it doesn't hurt them along the way. And I think it's a fair way to do it. It means you don't recover if they redeem their property during that time, but you're getting your real tax costs anyway. So I think that's a reasonable way to do it. And I'm suggesting
Rosalie, the $1,200 just prior, I assume that's when the property is sold. Who pays that $1,200? Will it be the successful applicant?
The buyer of the property. So in a tax sale process, when you get to the tax sale, you have to say, okay, this is the minimum bid on this property. And that minimum bid covers all of the excess taxes that haven't been paid and the penalty and interest.
Right.
And it also covers all the real tax charges. And we just add a $1,200 fee at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes a mortgage company will redeem it. Yeah.
That explains it.
Okay, so then. So the next thing I looked at was Planning Act fees. So your Planning Act fees are extremely low. Most municipalities that I've worked with charge, well, not the city, but the smaller municipalities charge $1,000. That's a pretty standard fee, and a little bit more for official plans. But as I pointed out, for official plans, which really aren't that much more work than zoning bylaws for the staff, they also have to pay a pretty hefty fee to the province. So I would suggest that all of your fees get upped to $1,000 for regardless of the process that you're doing. That covers your all your mail outs that you have to do, the advertising that you have to do. And I've noticed in some of the file reviews that I've been doing in terms of clearing out piles of paper, that actually what you guys have been doing is refunding people if the actual out-of-pocket costs are less than what they paid. But that doesn't cover at all your staff time. So standard fees are $1,000, and that makes sense to just charge $1,000 for zoning bylaw, official plan, severances, minor variances, whatever the application is, charge $1,000 for the application. You can even just say Planning Act applications, make it nice and simple.
Hey, Rosalie,
And then-
what about that $4,000 that's mentioned there?
Yeah, that's the provincial fee. We don't have any control over that. So when most Planning Act approvals, the council or the committee of adjustment will be the authority for that, and the final authority, subject to an appeal to the Local Planning Act Appeals Tribunal. But for official plans, you guys do the first approval, but then the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing has to approve it. And to do that process, for their staff to review it and send it on to the minister for approval, they charge $4,000. We don't have any control over
$4,000
that.
is charged to the municipality or to a landowner?
The developer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
And so I just pointed that out because a lot of municipalities charge more for an official plan review than they charge for a zoning bylaw review. And then they have to again pay another $4,000. So if you just charge $1,000, that covers the staff time, and they're already gonna have to pay that $4,000. We have no control over it. So I don't recommend charging more for an official plan review than for a zoning bylaw review. So then lawyers' fees in your user fee bylaw are fairly complex. They go through several different types of applications, and there's different types of prices. So they have tax certificate is $40, zoning compliance certificate $20. Most municipalities charge more than that. And that's without a survey. And then a zoning compliance certificate with a survey is $40. So it costs more if they send you more information than if they send you less information, which was a little surprising for me. And then work order certificate is $20. And usually the work order certificate is asked for within the same letter that the zoning compliance certificate is asked for. And a water arrears certificate is separate, $40. So I was suggesting that you combine the work order certificate into the zoning compliance certificate and don't differentiate if there's a survey or there isn't a survey. So you could charge $40 for the request, and that covers everything. Just makes it simpler. $40 is a little higher than some of the other municipalities I've worked for, so it's already a reasonable fee. The next was building code matters. So a couple of the municipalities I've worked for were lucky enough to find somebody who was qualified who would work for a percentage of the building permit fee that you get. So you never go into the red in your building department because the inspector, his costs are based on the permit fee, and there's always a little bit of that fee left over for the municipality. And it would be nice if we could recruit somebody like that. We may be able to, we may not be able to. Right now you don't. You have somebody that you pay by the hour. And your your building permit fees don't cover the cost of your building inspector, your chief building official. So I'm suggesting we increase them. They are pretty low. If you want me to do a survey of what neighboring municipalities charge, we can do that. I didn't do that in preparation for this report, but that's certainly something we can do so you can see how yours compare with others. This is one of those things where you want people to build, you want that development because it increases assessment, so it increases tax revenue. But on the other hand, why should I subsidize with my tax dollars my neighbor's construction project? That's not fair either. So it's a balancing act. Unless you can get that kind of arrangement where you always know you're going to be in the black. But I do think those fees need to be raised. I don't know when the last time was they were looked at or increased, but they're pretty low.
Rosalie, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the things, the bugbear that I had with this. It just seemed like as if there was fees added upon this and upon that. And I thought, holy smokes, somebody coming into our town is going to say, boy, do I want to get stuck with all these additional charges. It's almost like the city of Thunder Bay, which are notorious for their charges. We don't want to discourage people from coming in, but we do want to have a fair approach to the whole thing.
Right.
Thank you.
The other thing about building code is, so if somebody is a responsible builder and they do everything by the book, then the inspector comes out and looks at what they're doing at various stages of the project. And my understanding is there's 4 stages where the inspector has to come out and actually take a look. And that should be covered by your building permit fee, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're a bad guy or somebody who doesn't know what they're doing and they make mistakes and the inspector has to keep going back and keep telling you, look, you're doing this wrong, fix it, okay? Or you're doing this wrong, now you have to put a stop work order on, and then they don't obey the stop work order and the neighbor complains and you have to go back again. So additional inspections above the 4 that should be included in a building permit fee should have a separate fee. If they're the bad guy and they're not behaving and they're trying to get away with stuff and cut corners, or they're not competent, they're the ones that should be covering that cost, not your residential taxpayer next door. So I'm suggesting we add a charge to the bylaw that says it's $100 for every inspection above the 4 that are normal.
Yeah.
That's a good way to recover some of your building costs without, until we can perhaps find an arrangement where it's already covered. And I also noted that in the fire department, there's a fee of $100 if the owner requests you to come and do an inspection. I don't know why they would request you to do it if they have to pay $100, but the fire department also, and I don't know what their service level bylaw is, and I know that the fire chief wants the service level bylaw reviewed, but if they're going to be proactive and do some inspections proactively, and they find a problem, you might want to have a charge there. I don't know enough about it at this point in time. But there's no
Rosalie, that
fee
was
there
another item
for-
that had me a little bit concerned, because if residents know that there's going to be $100 charge, they're going to be more reluctant to ask for an inspection. Samantha, you probably know about this. Isn't there a time when the fire department goes around the community in October or something, and it's available to check properties out?
They don't at this time. They do some fire safety campaigning,
Okay.
but they don't go door to door. There's been discussion on it. Might be something they look at in the future. Obviously, COVID has sort of, I know there was discussion in the last couple of years, but there's been a lot of changes.
I'd recommend we remove that $100 charge thing, because as I say, it's probably going to make people reluctant to ask for a service that's really necessary.
I think the reason that that's there is for commercial and industrial properties who have to satisfy their insurance company that they're up to speed with the code. So let's say the Red Rock Inn, to satisfy their insurance company, they call the fire department, come over and check us out and give our insurance company a clearance certificate. And that's where the $100 comes in. I don't think it's for your residential person, but we should probably clarify what it's for and clarify that a residential customer doesn't have to pay that if they call the fire department and ask for help. And then I put a list of things in that municipalities are allowed to charge fees for that Red Rock doesn't charge fees for. One of them was commissioning affidavits, and apparently Red Rock has always done this for free. In some of the other municipalities I work for, we charge a fee if it's a person less than 65 years old, if it's a senior, and some people describe seniors as 55. I think you guys mostly do 55 plus. But if it's not a senior, we charge a fee. If it's a senior, we do it for free because it's, just a service we offer. There was this charge under the Public Works section that said $50 per form for government and industry forms, and none of us knew what that was or why it was in Public Works. But whatever it is, we'll take it out because we don't know. The typical fee for commissioning affidavits is $25 in other municipalities I've worked for. Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act requests, there's a regulation under the Act that sets the maximum fee you can charge for requests. And there's also search time and other things you can charge for. It's not a lot of money, but it's something. And it might discourage somebody from making a frivolous request. And if it's going to take you 7 hours to answer this request, you should get some compensation for that. So I'm suggesting that we put in our user fee bylaw the maximums that the regulations allow us to charge, which again are pretty small, but they're better than nothing.
How much would that be?
The request itself, I think the maximum is $5. And then there's search time. So if the search is going to answer the question, if it's going to take you less than 15 minutes, you can't charge anything. But if it's going to take you between a half hour and more, you can charge for every quarter hour. I think it's $7.50. It's not a lot of money.
Yeah, good.
If it's going to take an extraordinary amount of time, then you send the requester an estimate, And they have the opportunity to challenge that to the Information and Privacy Commissioner's office if they think it's too much. And you can come to a settlement on what would be appropriate. And then there's optional fees. So you folks license animals, although my understanding is a lot of people don't get the license for the animal. Some municipalities want to encourage spaying and neutering, so they offer a lesser price or a freebie if you can prove that they're spayed or neutered. Some municipalities will offer a lifetime license for the animal rather than having to renew it every year. And they just notify you when the animal dies. And it's more than an annual license, but it saves on the administration time of following up on it and making sure it's paid, which I don't think we do right now. Business licenses, you can license pretty much any business. That sometimes discourages businesses from coming, which is a reason not to do it. The business you do license in your bylaw right now is a food stand. And that may be because you want the health unit certificate before you let them set up in your community. So there's a valid reason to have that license so that you can prove that they're complying with all the provincial requirements. But some municipalities license hairdressers, some municipalities license plumbers. It's different in every municipality, but that's just something I note that you're allowed to do that you don't do, except for food stands. Then there's this insurance issue. So when people rent the recreation center, I don't know, and I didn't have time to find out what the practice is in Red Rock. In many municipalities, they'll say you can't rent unless you prove to us that you have insurance for this event, so that if something happens, you've got another insurer besides yours to answer for whatever happened. Private insurance for individual events like that is really expensive for the people who are throwing the event. And a lot of times it's a charity or a nonprofit and they want to do a fundraiser or something like that. And this insurance is a disincentive, yet it's appropriate for them to have. So a lot of the municipal insurers have a process where you can purchase, I think it's $50 or $75 per event. And you estimate how many events you're going to have for the year. And the municipality, say it's $60 an event and you think you're going to have 10. So you pay $600. And so the first event that comes along, they pay $60, they get the insurance coverage. The next one pays $60, they get the insurance coverage. If you get up to 10, you either have to buy another $600, and if it's October, you're probably not going to do that. But it's a program that the insurers came up with to help solve this dilemma, especially for nonprofits. So I have not talked to our insurance company to see if they do that. And if they don't offer that, it may be something that we want to put in the RFP for insurance that we're going to be doing next year. So that's just something. Then the last thing I suggested that you haven't done is wedding services. And I don't know if your staff want to do wedding services. In Nebing and Gillies, I did the wedding services as the clerk, and they charged $250 if it was a Saturday, $175 if it was a weekday, $100 if they did it in the office during a weekday when we were already there. And that, believe it or not, that happens, like a city hall wedding sort of thing. And the price we charged was obviously more than the cost of the staff doing the service. What the city of Thunder Bay did was they authorized marriages, but then they put out an RFP for contracted services. So the fee to the city is, say, $200, and then the private contractor would charge $400. So they make $200 themselves as a business, as an entrepreneur. So you might want to investigate whether anybody might be interested in doing that, or if the staff are interested in doing that. It's not a ton of money. There's not a lot of town hall weddings, but it's a little extra money and they're fun to do, in my opinion. Other clerks disagree with me, but I think they're fun to do. And then of course, when I was going through the bylaw, and I think it's just because it's been amended so often, just by amending the schedule, there's a bunch of inconsistencies in there. There's a bunch of notes and it's not clear which they cover. So a footnote would help. Okay, this note references this. I'm confused about when we charge HST and when we don't charge HST. And I think we need to talk with Nadia and the auditors about that. Some of the things that Red Rock charges HST for, other municipalities don't charge HST for. So I don't know what is normal because I'm not an auditor, but BDO has a lot of information on that and they can help us with that, I'm sure. So then I attached the user fee bylaw. Since I wrote the report, I also talked with Mr. Westerman about, the labor charges that we charge people for doing work. And the very last page had like charges for particular pieces of equipment and trucks and things. And we went through that and he gave me the ones that need to be removed, that we don't have anymore or we don't offer anymore. And some of them are just for internal use and they can come off that list. They're just for internal between department uses. All we need to include in this bylaw is what we would charge a member of the public for. So if you look at fees for services in public works, there's a general labor charge, which I think is $60 per hour for labor and equipment. And so we would not charge them, you know, $20 for the Ford crew cab. We would charge them $60 for the whole thing. So those things need to come off the list, but we do charge them $10 for use of the equipment to thaw out a water line. If we use our equipment to thaw out a private water line, we charge them $10. So some of these items on the last page need to stay in and some of them will come out and I can just review that with Blair. Actually, we did review it and he gave me a list. We'll take some of them out.
Rosalie, could you explain the internal charges again? I didn't quite understand what it was you were saying.
So if the Public Works Department does something for another department, and Sam, you may be wanting to correct me on this because I may not understand it correctly. There's an internal charge between departments for the use of the equipment. It's not a charge that we would send a bill to a private person for. It's just an interdepartmental charge. And that's not something we need to put in the user fee bylaw. Does that help? I don't know, Sam, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's right. So even when we do personal service on a property and they are invoiced, when that revenue ends up getting allocated, a portion gets allocated against the equipment that was used and against the wages, and then everything else is reported as overhead revenue for the municipality.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that's basically everything I had to say about the report. If somebody has any more questions, that'd be great. Otherwise, and you don't have to make these decisions tonight. Eventually, we have to bring back an amending bylaw. The decisions you're ready to make tonight, you can make. Any other decisions you want us to refer back to staff, we can come back later.
Rosalie, in your digging, how far back were some of these entries? Are we talking about 1960s, 1970s?
I actually didn't do that digging. I just looked at the most recent user fee bylaw schedule.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from council? Ms. Evans? So I guess we'll come back with an amended list, user fee, and then we will, go ahead.
I kind of gauged from things people were nodding as I was talking. So I know everyone's cool with the refrigeration,
Yes.
the appliance thing. That's a new one. I think everyone was cool with the real tax and the administrative fee for tax sales. So what I'll do is I'll bring back an amending bylaw and we can look at all the things I'm pretty clear on. And when I do that, I'll also do a report on the things that I still need some input on. Does that make sense?
Councilor Muir?
I thought that whole report made perfect sense. Honestly, the breakdown and the work that was put in it, it all makes perfect sense. It does. Looking at the budget and then that report, that perfect sense. Yeah.
Yep, so I guess we'll just get some clarification about the fire department, the $100. Like, we know it's more probably industrial and business, but just for clarification, and then the amendment to the, you know, the internal fees and things like that, we'll get a new list. But it looks like everybody's agreeing with the rest of it, which all makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, moving on, item 3.2. The budget. So we do have Ms. Kuki here to help us through it, and we'll start that discussion.
So I'm sure the first thing you'll notice is that this looks a little bit different than the budgets that I have seen and probably that you have seen in the past. I'm just going to kind of size it so I can see it beside. So I hope that that's okay. And sometimes what I find is that some people will say like, oh my gosh, I don't like this. And other people will be like, no, this makes more sense. So we can sort of approach this one of two ways. If you would prefer to sort of give me your questions, or I can kind of give you an overview first and then take questions. What would you guys all prefer?
Councillor Mayor?
I love the overview first and then questions.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Cool. Let's do that. All right. So the very first page is kind of like where everything comes to, and this will be the sum total of all the other pages. So this is kind of where, councils in the past have even just given this to the community as like, here we are for our projected revenues and then our projected expenses. So the first page, I've given you what we have so far as of December 31st, 2020. That was as of Friday. So I got that straight from the auditor. I don't think this is going to be the end figures yet, but it is, probably a good representation of where it's going to be. I don't think there's going to be too many more changes to the audit at this point. And then I gave you your 2020 budget and your 2021 budget. I factored in a 1.5% taxation increase, which we talked about as a group some weeks back when we did our little budget presentation together, and that's represented here. What you can see on the first page, second line down, is that even though we have put in a 1.5% tax increase, we have a reduction in the commercial taxes because of the assessment decreases. I didn't see that coming. It was a bit of a sticker shock to me. So one thing that we're going to want to look at as a group is, if we are going to keep that 1.5% increase, do we make an amendment to our ratio bylaw? And do we want to do that for the commercial and industrial? Okay, because that's a big hit. We're basically losing almost $250,000 straight off our revenue before we even kind of get going. Water and sewer billings are also increased, and I have a supplementary document that kind of got you to those numbers that I want to go through with you guys as well, but then some decisions are going to be needed to be made on that as well. And the fees and service charges, I did make an estimate based on last year's numbers. I had seen that we had budgeted 194,000 in 2020, but we only made it about just over 100,000. I'm assuming it's because COVID did slow things down, and looking at 2021, I thought it would be wise to sort of keep the budgeted figure in line. I did not have the information from Ms. Evans's report, so that may go up or down depending on what council decides for the user fees as well. The grant monies are figures that Samantha and I have gone through, and we have actually confirmations for. So this excludes our project grants. This does not include the water pollution control plant grant or any of the construction projects. This would just be things like our OMPF, our gas tax, and that sort of thing. So capital isn't included in this. We would think of this as the operating budget only. Okay. Next page is more of a pie graph. Some people are a bit more visual, but it's the representation of the revenues that I just went through. And it gives you an idea of how the different revenues are broken down for the community. Then we have the expenses, and I sort them by department. And the reason why we do this is because it is sometimes useful to know, like, what's protective service costing us, what's environmental costing us. So this wasn't broken out necessarily like this on our last formats, but this is a way that you can see sort of each overarching segment. The other thing that I did is I made this document tie directly into your audit. And I'm trying to create some consistency for council so that when you see this every month with the actual year-to-date figures, then when your audit comes, these are the same categories that your audit has. So they're going to be consistent every quarter. Okay. Nothing terribly crazy here that I need to sort of point out. I guess the one thing is in the general and administration, but basically this is just your overview of your budgets, your individual departments. Okay. So then on page 5 of the document is the same expenses, but instead of being broken down by division, they're broken down by type. So whether it's a salary, materials, contracted services, insurance, that sort of thing. Once again, this breakdown is in your audit as well. So I just took the figures that were the categories that were right out of the audit and made this document reflect them. So the two expense categories are the same, just written in different ways.
Nadia, there's a couple of large minus sign items. One is 31% and the other one is 62%. The insurance and financial, the insurance, I recall our former CAO being absolutely livid with the amount that was being charged by the insurance companies, or the rate increase. Is that the sort of thing that's being represented here? Or
yeah, your current treasurer is also quite livid about that. It is, although, an industry specific thing, and we're seeing it across municipalities. And in fact, there's lobbying groups going straight to bat for municipalities, because the insurance companies have, I don't know, just done this weird targeting, and municipalities are seeing more like 100 to 80% to 100% increases in insurance without any change in operations. So it's definitely an issue. What that final column is the percent change of budget. So what I take a look at, and if you take a look at the insurance one as an example, our 2020 year end looks at $122,000.
Yeah.
Didn't make sense to me to budget $345,000, which was budgeted the year before. So you're seeing the change in the budget, but that was just sort of my assertion as I went through this, if that makes sense. So unless there's something that council knows about that I don't know about that we need to factor in, that's why there's that dramatic decrease in that particular line. Same thing for materials and supplies. In 2020, we budgeted $905,000, and we're looking like we're only gonna spend $565,000. So I didn't see the need to budget that high again, right? And of course, this document is never going to be exact, but that's sort of the rationale, if that makes sense to you guys.
Okay, so minus 31%. What does that mean in dollars and cents? And I don't understand it.
Yeah, so minus 31.75% represents a $287,000 drop in budget between 2021 and 2020.
That's drop in what's been budgeted, or
That's right. So I'm budgeting 31.75% less this year
Oh.
than I did last year.
Okay.
Does that
Thank
make
you.
a bit more sense? Yeah, no
Yes,
problem.
yes, thank you.
Okay. Then moving on, pages 7 through 14 are just the individual departments. So we kind of break it down even farther. So where you had your general and administration line, you're going to then see those objects within that line. So now we can go into sort of the nitty gritty. I do caution council to sort of stay out of these weeds a little bit, because it does start sort of leaning a little more into management and admin. But I also think this is a great communication tool that which we talked about in our session, is for council to be able to say to someone, if they ask, this is where our breakdown is. Like, this document, once it's approved, I think can be released to the public. So I put it in here so that you guys kind of understand the depth for each section. So one of the things that I wanted to sort of touch on is the allowance for doubtful accounts, which Samantha and I have talked about. If you take a look at, this is now on page 7, it's the second to last line. So this represents a figure that never gets collected through the year. And it was originally budgeted about $250,000, which is pretty high. And I know that there is some taxes that we automatically know we're going to levy that we're not going to collect, likely on the mill property. But I did sort of wonder if it made sense, and I had a chat with Mark about this today, for us to leave it budgeted at around $190,000, but then for me to actually concentrate some efforts into having regular communication with some of the ratepayers that are our historical slow payers, and start opening up things like payment plans. I don't think this is being done consistently. It is kind of a task and an undertaking, but I found a lot of success in Conwy. When I started here in January, we had over 40 properties that were 3 years plus, and now I have one. And it was just a matter of kind of engaging with those residential ratepayers and talking about how the pandemic impacted them, but then also with the clear goal of getting them rolling on a payment plan. Melissa.
I just wanted to say that there was some funding available for people that were behind on taxes. I don't know if you're aware of that funding. So
Yeah.
maybe that could be something that even like volunteering to help people fill out those forms, or I do know that it does exist.
Yeah,
Could be
definitely.
something
That's
that's
something that
mentioned.
they have to apply for. So we
Yep.
can't do that. But yes, we can definitely ask if they've applied for that.
Can we
Mhm.
forward that information to numbered company 189? Perhaps they could take care of some of their obligations.
So, so the 190,000, I'm hoping, is a huge over budgeted figure, because we don't have a lot of wiggle room in this budget. So my goal is to sort of get that to actually be a lot lower than it is. So the rest of this document basically just represents the individual departments. I have used a couple of sort of modalities to come up with the figures. So one of them is, looking at last year to see what did we actually spend in 2020, where we greatly over budgeted, where we under budgeted. But then also, because I do have the benefit of almost half a year of transactions, looking at the 2021 year and making sure that before I put a budget figure in, that we're not already past that. So I did do that as I prepared this document. But if there's anything that council particularly wants to look at in depth, I can get some detail for that. I guess the most important piece of it is that after we do this, we have a budgeted surplus, or like budgeted transfer to capital, we say, of just over $76,500. And there hasn't been anything budgeted to go into reserve. I think that this is kind of a unique year in that this is probably the first time that council's been given information like this. We have had a lot of transition in administration. And so, I would never necessarily recommend passing a budget where we don't contribute to our reserves. However, we do have to factor in the investment in the capital that we have to make as a community. But I'm hoping that this kind of sparks a bit more long-term planning and some really good conversations about sort of what to do next. Whether it's change the ratios, whether it's taking a look at the water policies. This is where I kind of need to lean on you guys and your expertise, because I'm new and I don't really know I don't know your members and your residents like you guys do.
Nadia, you mentioned that there's amortization of $40,000. Is that not related to reserve?
Amortization is a way of reducing the presented value of our capital assets. So it's not actually something that we pay money for. So it doesn't impact our reserve transfers at all, because it's not something we actually pay for.
I thought it was by putting some money aside for the future of, say, a grader or a building or thing of that sort. So isn't that money taken set aside for that, which would be in a way a form of a reserve?
Yeah, I understand that's what you thought it was, but that isn't correct. Amortization is not money that we take aside. It's just an accounting transaction that reduces the value of the assets on the balance sheet. It's not actually, when the township has amortization, there's no money that moves around as a result of that.
Okay.
It's not a reserve transfer.
You also implied that there was no money in reserves at this point.
No, there is money in reserves. There's no money going into reserves as a result of this budget. So oftentimes in a municipal budget, what I'll say is, here's our revenues, here's our taxation revenue, and here's our expenses. And I also recommend we put this much aside into reserve. And I haven't been able to do that because with a $76,000 surplus, that will get used up in our capital requirements for the year. So we don't have that ability to sort of save any money this year, which is understandable because we have a lot of capital projects on the go that we have to contribute to. But it's something that we definitely want to make sure doesn't happen year over year, because we should be putting money away every year.
Can you tell us what we do have in reserve?
Yes, at the end of 2019, I don't have the 2020 figures. Your auditor would have them. At the end of 2019, I think there was just over 1.3 million.
Wow. Wow.
Councillor Muir?
So Nadia, I understand looking at that, with not putting anything away this year, it just doesn't look possible. So what do we need to really look at and start thinking about doing long term here? I mean,
Okay.
The fact of the matter is, we can't look at saying, you know what, let's just keep raising taxes. We gotta plateau here and not raise tax. We need to generate some kind of income here, some kind of revenue, municipalities.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
So my thoughts, and this may not make me very popular. My thoughts are a couple things. We definitely need to take a look at staffing and make sure that we are as tightly staffed as we possibly can. That is our largest expense. I would recommend council does whatever they need to do to get that mill property sold. I would recommend that council does whatever they need to do to get the subdivision underway. And if that can be done this year, whatever needs to happen should happen. This mill property sold and transferred to new ownership and a subdivision are going to make the most significant impact on the taxation revenue. Slower term things, longer term things, and I think we talked about this at the budget meeting, making sure there's much economic development is happening as possible. I do believe that council looking at versus a 1.5, looking at even a 1.8, 1.85 increase this year would help. It's not going to be the problem solver, but it's definitely going to help. I would recommend that we take a look at the commercial tax ratio, maybe bump that up a little bit. And then I absolutely recommend putting in place the water increases that I've proposed. Those are my recommendations.
So the water increase proposal is 2%, right?
So
Yeah.
both increases to the flat rate and increases to the cubic meters. And I've already factored in the fact that we would make that change no sooner than July 1st. So
Right.
it would only be half a year, but at least we'd get that. And that would put our revenue at about 357.
Right, so a residential flat rate right now, it's $45.96. So the 2% increase would go to $46.88. So just less than $1, right, per month. Okay. Councillor Muir?
Yeah, so that rate increase isn't because for any reason except that it's not enough's being charged to cover the costs, because
So-
we're subsidizing with tax where we not. That was what the whole thing. Taxes were subsidizing the wastewater and water treatment.
Yeah, like the wastewater and water treatment right now, I think the figures I ran initially is that it's working at 25% capacity because we don't have that big property. So that's falling on your residents. So like, there's no way we could ask the residential tax base to cover this. And I don't know what to do. Like I'm gonna probably see if I can start making some phone calls to other municipalities, because I don't know if there's some other way to mitigate this. It's definitely on my list for Aqua to ask them what the plan is.
I do know Nadia Greenstone had put out a document. They did a bunch of research into it. That might be a good source to use,
Yeah,
Greenstone.
I'm the deputy treasurer of Greenstone. I definitely know that. And
Never mind then.
I will also say that, you know, the water rates in Greenstone are incredibly high. And there's a dedicated Facebook page to all sorts of funny pictures of me because of it. So it didn't go well.
Ms. Evans?
Another one I know of is Wawa. Wawa has a similar problem where the water system used to cover way more people and suddenly, and I think the CAO there, or the past CAO there, had some reports out and things to the government. So Wawa is another one to maybe check with.
I will ask. I know they declared bankruptcy, but I will find out if that was why. Okay. So this budget has the 1.5% increase, like I had said. I talked to Mark this morning. We had a conversation in advance of this meeting to sort of prepare so that he wasn't blindsided by this either. I definitely recommend council considers a higher increase for this year.
Higher than 1.5?
Yeah. Mark can talk to his opinion on this as well.
Go ahead, Melissa.
I just have a question. So we all know like the housing market has gone up quite a bit here, and there's a lot of houses selling and buying. So do you think like with the MPAC, there should be some increases in their rate? So adding a tiny bit of tax revenue from that? That's something I guess maybe we can't foresee.
MPAC did a freeze in assessment increases because of COVID. And you guys had a decrease in commercial industrial. I don't know that we're going to see that for 2021. Any increases, maybe 2022, 23, but who knows?
Mark, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll wait for council to finish. I know Councillor Tedesco looked like he was ready to speak there, and then I can certainly give an opinion. Or
Nope.
no,
Councillor McDonald?
McDonald.
Hi again. I was wondering, under the general administration, what would be included under materials and supplies?
So
What
these
kind
are,
of items?
yeah, I'm going to actually pull this up right now so I can get the exact accounts. Materials general. Okay. So these are things like your utilities, your office supplies, courier postage, computer supplies, advertising, telephone, public relations.
Okay. And that's, it seems kind of high, but obviously the last few years is the similar amount.
Yeah, so there is a slight increase. It looks like things like subscriptions are $10,000 a year. Travel was $4,000 in 2019, so that's going to be a little bit lower. There's no like one huge item. It's kind of like all these little 2, 3, 4,000s that kind of make up. Yeah.
Oh, I have another question. That's okay.
Yeah.
So on your second last page, it's about the recreational and cultural services.
Yep.
Since the rec center and interpretive center were not open last year, where I don't really see any savings in there for like the wages and operation costs. I know we had some layoffs, some staff layoff.
So if you look at the first line, the first column, it was our preliminary figures at the end of 2020 were 111,000 for wages, but we had budgeted 243. So obviously that budget went into place before we knew the impact of COVID.
Mhm.
So given that we are still in the pandemic phase, I've budgeted 120,000 more in line with what the 2020 finals were, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't. So 101,000 in the beginning, or hang on one sec. So the 2020 budget was 43.
Yes, but
And
because
that
of
was,
COVID, we only spent 111.
okay, so you're saying it was budgeted at 243, but because everything was closed, only 111 was spent?
I'm assuming that's why only 111 was spent. I don't really know, but I would ask Sam, I guess, more if that's reflective of why. And then given that we're already 6 months into the year and everything is still closed, I kind of just kept the budget similar to
Right.
what the actuals were last year.
What else is included under that recreation and cultural services? Would that be just the interpretive center and the rec center? Or is there
I can
more?
find out.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Okay, so the salaries. Sam, are you with us? So in that I've put section 711, 721, 24, and 25. Is that all the buildings that Melissa had said? I'm just not super familiar with the individual GL codes, but I think
Yeah.
Sam has them a little more, yeah. And what I will tell you is what I did do is I pulled them off of what the auditors had in those individual sections. So they just have the same codes that I do, but I don't necessarily know
Yeah.
which each section is.
Okay, so yeah, that would include the recreation center, marina building, marina,
Okay.
yeah, waterfront park, yeah.
And 727, did I tell you that one?
727,
Mhm.
arena.
Arena, okay.
So should I be asking all these questions that I have right now? This is my first budget.
Yes.
go through? Yes. Okay. What is environmental? What would be under that? Sorry, you're gonna have to look through all these codes now.
Yeah, no worries. That's why I have a couple screens open. So if you see me looking away, I'm just looking at my other screens. So environmental. So that is 412, 413, 431, 433, 434.
Okay, so that's your sanitary sewers, sewage treatment plant, water treatment plant. And then your water main.
Can I just keep going? Okay, protective services. That's the policing? And also, is it fire department also, or is that a separate?
Yeah, that's
Just-
fire and police.
is typically bylaw enforcement too.
Bylaw and animal, I think, is in there as well.
Oh, okay. And transportation would be the roads?
Yeah.
Just the roads in that budget?
That is your roads and public works.
Okay.
So the recreation budget being lower by 26%, that would be because of closing the arena?
I personally think it's probably because of the impact of the pandemic, because the budget for 2020 was 553,
Yeah.
but you only spent 283 last year. So I'm going to assume that it was half of what your normal budget was because of the pandemic. Given that we are still in a pandemic for the first 6 months of 2021, I budgeted 408, thinking positively that we're going to open for the summer. And certainly if council thinks that these don't make sense, like this is also the time where you can say to me, no, we need to budget more, or no, we need to budget less. Like keep in mind, I made this budget, but it's your budget. So you can definitely tell me to change it.
I have
Well,
another
looks like It
question.
seems to be a nice cautious budget that you're projecting, and it's kind of middle of the line and preparing for the worst and being ready with for the best. So looks good to me.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Sorry, Melissa.
I just see a $261,000 increase in budget under the transportation for salaries and wages. Is that from Aqua? No.
No, so Aqua is in our environmental tab. I don't know what this is. I did make a note to look into it, but basically we had budgeted 323 in 2020 and the wages went through the roof. And so when I took a look at the 2021 budget, I'm understanding we're not doing any staffing cuts. So I made the 2021 budget line up with what I thought the wages
Actual was?
were.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I very much try hard to over budget for expenses. And then if we end up spending less than what I budgeted for at the end of the year, great. But when I looked at this, the last thing I want to do is blow a budget line item by 200 grand.
Yeah. There's an item under general administration contracted services, and that shows an increase of 200%. Is that due to lawyers and consultants and
Me,
costs?
I'm in there as well. So that is going to go up a little bit because my salary is coming out of there as well.
Ms. Evans?
Yeah, that would also be your economic development service, the external contractor for your economic development.
Yeah.
And it also includes the payout to the former CAO is in there as well.
So Nadia, when you're suggesting a change to the business or the industrial tax rate, what are you looking at there? Or what is your suggestion? Or how do we start that process of changing it?
So you would pass a new tax rate bylaw or tax ratio bylaw. So there should be a bylaw in place that says the commercial tax is this much ratio of your residential tax. So you can change that ratio, and I'm going to sort of look to Rosalie a little bit for some more advice on that. At the end of the day, I understand that council doesn't want to impose a huge increase to any one particular ratepayer. And I do also understand that there's going to be individual residential ratepayers that are paying a high rate of tax for where their houses are and what their houses are worth. The problem is that if we put in a 1.5 or even a 2% increase, we're only going to change the overall transfer to capital by like $20,000. So nothing that we're talking about changing the tax rates is going to solve every problem. But I do recommend sort of inching our way closer. And I think where we can make the impact is by getting that provision for doubtful accounts down as low as I possibly can. Because right now I've got it sitting at 190 is conservative. So trying to collect basically as much of the taxes that we levy as possible. And also really focusing our efforts into getting the subdivision and the mill property sold and the subdivision going. I understand that probably neither of those things is going to happen in 2021, which is why my recommendation is to do like a 1.85 increase. Think about who your commercial properties are, and if they can sort of absorb a little bit of the assessment decrease that's occurred. And even if we can add 30 to 40,000 and get us to a nice surplus of that 115, 120, that would make me feel a bit more comfortable.
Mark, go ahead.
So generally speaking, this was quite an ordeal to undertake as we waved our way through this initial process. So I think we've already got a plan moving forward. We've had some great discussions this week with Nadia, as well as with the staff in the office. These again are your documents. This is probably the most important document that you will see as a council, for sure. So Melissa, to ask those questions is fantastic.
So fantastic. You
have to know, and I'd be more concerned when there's no question. So all of council, that's fantastic to see. I think where Nadia is coming from, I think right now, in my personal opinion, where we are and where we've kind of landed right now, June 1st, 2021, we kind of have to go with this document. It is well prepared. Again, realizing that it is a working document. We're 6 months into the year right now. Moving forward, we can guarantee that moving into to the budget for the next year, we've already got a plan to start that process in October. We've discussed that. Moving forward, we've got budget variance reports for council, which I think moving forward will be a huge addition to council, because you will be able to follow that budget on a quarterly basis and see exactly where we are. 1.5 is comfortable. I know that's the number council was comfortable with in a directive, but certainly that doesn't enable us any real leeway to plan for reserves at this point as well, which I truly believe is something that we should do, understanding that we may not be able to this year. There's a lot out there, just even trying to sift through it all. There's a lot out there right now. The good news is we'll get there. That we will. But again, knowing it's your document, add a little closer. I'm sure we could move some numbers and have a little bit more. As Nadia says, she'll feel a lot more comfortable, and I will as well. We can look at those numbers again. You want to plan for the future, and I mean, the best way to do that is to handle each year and each budget as they go. And like I said, it's the most important document. So it's one of those things. I mean, this budget is set and ready to go at 1.5 with council's approval. But if there was we could, as we talked about this morning, I mean, if you went into 1.85 or an increase like that, it may put the township in a better spot, not only this year, but also moving forward. They're tough decisions to make, but I think they're decisions that we will have to make moving forward.
Ms. Evans?
So I'm not a financial expert and I have not talked to either Mark or Nadia about this, but the other thing council needs to consider is what you want to do in the long term is make sure you don't have a year with a huge spike of a tax increase. You want to try and level out your tax increases over time. That's what asset management tries to do. You want to make sure you're planning to repair and replace all your assets so that you don't suddenly have to buy something expensive and 1 year has a huge tax increase. This budget is tight, as Mrs. Kugi pointed out, but you're also budgeting on a COVID time. Next year, you know, fingers crossed, it's normal again. So if normal budget means higher expenses because other things are open and you haven't budgeted for that this year, you're going to have a spike next year. So increasing the tax rate now will help smooth that out. That's what you want to do. You want to try and over time, again, I'm not the financial expert, but this is what I've learned. You want to smooth it out as much as you can so you don't have a sudden wow and your taxpayers go, holy crap. So just my 2 cents.
Councillor Muir?
I understand what you're saying. For myself, what I think I would like to see, and I think a lot of people might agree too, is that if you're going to consider a 1.85% increase, I'd like to see too, maybe myself, I'd feel comfortable getting an update, find out where we are with the subdivision, get an update where we are. Because I mean, the planning part's very important here in this, right? We got to have all the table loaded up with the cards here to see what we've got, right? So I understand the 1.8 is there. I understand the recommendations 100%, but I do want to see where we are with that subdivision. How close are we? What can we get? How far are we away from that? Because that's gonna play a role in decision making too. So we got to kind of stop it.
Where this is before we pass a 1.85 years, what you're saying?
Yeah, I want when's the environmental assessment starting? I mean, we got to kind of stop the bleeding here at some point. I know we got to make long-term, but long-term, again, those recommendations are a subdivision. That mill property obviously has to be sold. Somebody's got to do something there. These are long-term plans, but if we got an update here on what's happening, so we know, might be a more comfortable decision saying, hey, everybody, here's the plan. Here's where we are. We're going this way. Bear with us. Here's the plan, right? And it might be more palatable that way.
Yeah, and like you may get, once those things come into place, you may get natural assessment increases so that you don't have to raise taxes 1 year. I've seen that too. It's just, this is not that year, unfortunately, because we had such a decrease in commercial. Like that hit 220,000. If that hadn't happened, I would recommend a 1% increase. It's just, this is not, well, Sam can attest, I called her on Friday and was like, what is this? What happened? Because I thought I was going to be working. I didn't realize there was that drop. I thought I was going to be working with much more of a buffer.
So Nadia, would we see an eventual change to the assessment to Soteris out in the corner because they're not fully operational right now?
See, I mean, I'm not MPAC, right? But I would be calling them for sure if, you know, if, yeah, I do feel like a transaction like that would actually trigger them. But yeah, like that's definitely what you want.
Okay. And they're right now impact is frozen everything, right? That's what you had said.
Yes. They've frozen natural assessment increases where they just kind of roll out their decisions kind of thing. But I do know like they're still doing like when someone calls and asks for an assessment, they do it, and on new builds, they do still assess. So I would assume that transaction, if that mill property sold or if a new subdivision went in, that would trigger something.
Okay, well, council's well aware of where we're sitting at with 189, the mill property. So we can't really speak much about it because it is going through the courts. And the subdivision, I guess we can reach out to him, but I mean, it's only gonna go as fast as his environmental assessment. So I mean, we can't keep delaying putting out a budget, right? To hear back from them, like, I don't know how long that's gonna take, and now with actually being still COVID times and however all that process works. So kind of we're in a catch-22 here, kind of stuck, but we do have to move forward.
So then the other option is your commercial tax ratio, which right now is 1, like it's the same as your residential. Would be another thing to consider, is to change that ratio. Rosalie?
Go ahead, Mark.
I agree with all of the discussion. I can see exactly where Gord's coming from in this, and I think that is the plan, right? There is a plan that we have to put together to get there. There's no doubt about that. Even into the rates and the changes, that may be a plan. I don't see it being a plan right now for 2021. I think we're in a catch-22. I think it's something we look at moving forward. We look at all of those. I have actually a scheduled meeting with MPAC early mid next week with the property manager. So we will have a detailed meeting about Red Rock and where we stand. So that meeting is in the works. I think it's the 16th. I believe it was scheduled today. So agree 100%. We have to put a solid plan moving together forward. The trouble again, and knowing that and remembering that this is council's document, we're kind of in a bit of a catch-22 this year because of where we landed and where Red Rock sits right now with all the changes. We're behind times. It's June 1st today. No pressure. Any questions council has, and like I said, it's your document to pass. But we really need to move forward as well, because we're kind of in a bit of a spot right now, even with collecting revenue on taxes. We have to set the budget in that case. That's why we came together with this, whether you're at the 1.5, again, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, it is up to council. And Nadia will make that change as we go. But I think it's very important on a move forward plan, because we're really behind the 8 ball in 2021. We can get there, we can fix it, but we're certainly gonna have to act pretty quick on budget for 2021. I know it's not ideal, but the whole situation really hasn't been ideal as per se moving forward. We will get there. That's not a problem. We have the ability and the staff to put a plan together. It's just we're really a bit tied right now, moving forward for sure.
So I have a question for council. The commercial properties that were subject to assessment decrease, these, I don't know if it was 1 or 2, like I don't know how many, I didn't dig into what the breakdown is, but does it make sense to sort of take a look at that as a ratio increase? Because that would, if we did 1.85 and did a ratio increase on commercial, probably those properties would still be paying less than they were last year, even though they're paying more of a ratio to the residential. Like the dollars would be less for them still. Sam, do you know which properties were impacted? No. Okay.
And again, as I said, we have these meetings scheduled with MPAC. We will get all those answers. We have, obviously information on what and who, but we will get all this information very, very shortly, and it'll take us time to put it all together.
Three very important things, and one is, I'm not a gambler, but I have to believe that we will see some money from the company 189, hopefully in the relatively near future. Secondly, what you had said, Melissa, when MPAC increases the value of properties, that's going to increase the amount of basic money that's coming through. And I think we maybe need to be keeping in mind too that those errant tax properties are going to get caught up as long as there's a little bit of application of moral suasion. They'll be paying hopefully the better part of that 190,000, and that's going to be pretty decent. Over
I'm
now.
comfortable with 1.5. I'm not comfortable with 1.8. Unfortunately. And I think it's the calm before the storm. I think all those provincial grants that we're accustomed to, I think the province of Ontario is in bad shape. And I think it's like the perfect storm. So yeah, I think people are in a bad place. I think the pandemic has been hard on people financially and employment. And I don't know if I can do it to them. So that's how I feel.
How do you feel about raising the commercial ratio?
As long as they're not paying more than they were last year.
Okay.
Sorry, Nadia, I like to be a team player. I think people are financially struggling.
Melissa?
Sorry, what would the point be of raising the rate if you're not getting any extra money? The commercial rate.
The ratio.
Yes.
So
right.
it would give us more money. So basically right now, our commercial tax, Sam just sent me the bylaw. So the tax ratio for commercial is set at 1. So if whatever the residential rate is, the commercial rate is the same.
Right.
But that group had a huge assessment decrease.
Right.
So if we leave the rate the same, they should actually be paying fewer dollars on their tax bill, which is why we're not getting that $220,000. It's not because we did anything, it's because the assessment value went down. So if we raise the ratio up and we say, okay, well, the commercial ratio is now 1.5% of the residential ratio, we can recoup some of that, but then they're still going to pay less dollars. That's kind of the balancing act. It would just mean you have to change the bylaw.
Should we be paying or set that rate similar to like other towns near us? Or are they all set at 1 also?
No, they're not all set at 1. And it
Is
really
that something
depends,
we
right?
can
So
factor
for example, Conme, where I am right now, has 1 commercial property. So it's not going to make a difference what we set, you know what I mean? That's why I'm not as familiar with what the commercial makeup is. I'd have to go through the roll and see what the properties are and see what they were paying last year versus what they're paying this year. But then you take a place like, Geraldton or Greenstone, and there's tons of commercial properties. So sometimes they'll set the commercial rate at less because they want to support business, right? But what's happened here is that those commercial people, their tax bill, if we leave it the same, their taxes are going to be much lower, much, much lower.
Councillor Mayor?
The chances of you making a spreadsheet to show us what the different ratio would affect on the property, so we could have a closer look to see what it would be. I know that's, again, it's time sensitive.
Yeah, no, I'll do that. Absolutely. Would that be whole
I
session
do
though?
trust.
Rosalie, Mark? That's closed, right? We'd have to do a closed session for that.
Oh, you can do it company A, company B, and make it anonymous.
And don't put the roll
So that
numbers.
if you're gonna name names and tax bills, then yeah, that's closed session.
Okay.
I mean, it's one of those things, 1.5 is one of those things comfortable, but I mean, I really need to see myself to go higher. I mean, I gotta see the hills through the trees too, right? What would it do? What's the long term? So that's kind of where I'm sitting at.
Yeah. I can definitely do that. So again, I'm sorry to keep leaning on you, Rosalie. So if I did that, would we do another special meeting to review that? And then because I would like to get a budget passed really soon, because here's the other problem, friends. Unless you decide to do so tonight, we should really, if we are going to make a change to the water, we should figure that out today so that it can go out and people can be notified. But we also need 21 business days minimum to release the tax bills. And I'm going to propose an August and an October due date, which means we need to get the tax bills out. Like, I don't like doing an exactly 21 days. I like to give people as much time as possible to pay their tax bills. So again, thinking about cash flow and all that stuff, like we don't have scads of time. So if I were to get a commercial ratio analysis for you guys so that you could see, okay, if we do this, this is what the dollars and cents are going to be. These are the properties. And another special meetings to pass the budget. Is this too complicated? Am I overthinking this?
Go ahead, Mark.
I don't think you're overthinking it. If council wants to see additional information before they pass the budget, we can accommodate. It's just a question of timing, right? And the longer it's postponed, the more difficult it is to get the tax bills out with a reasonable time for people to pay and a reasonable cash flow for the municipality in the meantime.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand the 1.85 where you're coming from, because now knowing whatever government's going to be like, they may not be our OMP, funding, all of that stuff could be reduced. So then what does that mean for next year? It could be a higher increase in our tax rate. So having that little bit of cushion, which is not very much at the end of the day, right? For 1.5 to 1.85 or 6 at wherever we want to go. I do believe we do have to increase it. Our goal was 1.5. We know that I don't think any municipality is going around that way just because of the unknown. But to add the change to the industrial and like that tax rate, I think we should be looking at that for sure, moving that up a little bit.
Okay.
That's my thoughts on it. But it's not right now this year, it's what's going to happen next year. If the government's giving out money like crazy right now, it's going to come to an end. And what does that mean for us?
So Sarah, I know that you don't love the 1.85, but bear with me on this. So if we look out 3 years from now, and we've got a subdivision going, we've got those properties, we've got this mill property sold or close to being sold, we could look at like a 2024 tax rate decrease, right? Because if we've got assessment increases in a particular year, then you don't need to raise your tax rate. So there's definitely, like, I definitely wouldn't recommend making a 1.85 like a trend. But I also do think that with a document like this, that's super clear, council can say, like, we didn't want to do this, but look, this is what the facts are.
For sure. I mean, we've been dragged through the mud though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we have for a long time. Yeah, for years.
I think knowing that the residential development is coming online eventually within, I would think, a year and a half, but also for the potential of investments coming into the community. Soteris, once that's up and going, like that's a bit of a game changer there as well. And hopefully the mill property, hopefully in a year we get something going there. But some of those things are out of our control. They really are right now. But besides pushing forward and moving forward and trying to get, you know, other people interested in certain parcels of land in Red Rock, that's where we're at. So
We can't scare them away though either, right?
no.
Yeah.
But it's right now we're in a hard place, but our outlook is that we will, you know, look into maybe reducing the rural taxes compared to in town, right? Like we did have that discussion. We understand that they pay a high rate, and for what? But that's not going to happen this year, maybe not next year, but down the road, like that is our plan. That is our goal to, you know.
So you kind of want to smooth out, like, or cap the max or something? Is that what you were thinking? Okay.
Yeah, eventually, right? Like it doesn't make any sense why it's so high out there, but that's not something that can just be changed overnight without impacting everybody in town. Mark?
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to look at it, because I think there's a bigger picture to kind of studying the whole system, whether that's the tax rate you want to move on for every year. I think as the mayor or as Rosalie stated, I mean, you're so much better off to be flat. We just have, you know, year by year as opposed to having those spikes. You just have to figure out how comfortable you are with that particular increase. As for the rates, and there's so many different factors involved in that I think personally that's something that we should look at beyond, you know, as a complete study, because I mean, not knowing exactly where that decrease is in your commercial base, you could shuffle that. Ultimately, not having all the detail, you may shuffle that on to somebody who's actually paying. So I'm not 100%, I guess, convinced that you may see that amount paying less. If that was particular to one particular commercial tax structure, we could actually be going the other way. That's why I think this meeting that I have scheduled with MPAC next week will give a huge change and a huge picture. Again, I think it's something that we have to move forward to in a long-term plan. I agree. I think looking at those, I know most municipalities do have a higher ratio for commercial, or lots do, in that case. But not knowing all the factors of just raising at this point, I just don't know. It may easily go one way, but with quite a bit of experience with MPAC and a lot of those factors, I mean, I would be afraid that it could easily go the other way for your residents or your commercial businesses that are left, right? And I think the worst thing you want to do is really go at anyone in that case. I think there's been a lot of work put into this budget at 1.5. If council was willing, you know, to move forward with that or the increase, I think we'll deal with where that lands us and hopefully be in at least a good spot to move forward and keep consistent. Lots of times that people will be in those chairs will be quite hesitant to go higher, and that's a tough decision. That's a tough decision for council. But again, it's one of those things that this year has been a challenge. You know, everybody coming in the process and the time. So it's I think it's very important to get budget done now. I think it's also just as important to put a solid plan together for the future and to not make any drastic changes right now. So I think this proposed budget, at whatever rate we set, whether that is 1.5 or it is 1.6 or 7 or wherever council's comfortable, I think it'll at least give us that groundwork to get through 2021 and move forward. So that's kind of where we landed. And I don't think it's anything that we have to be really afraid about moving forward, because it will come together and we will have a plan moving forward for the following years. It's very tough right now in the situation we're all in, right? So that's kind of my opinion on that. I think we should look solid at this year right now where we stand, and then move forward with a good solid plan for many years to come.
Okay. So I think to get this going to the next phase, I do need sort of a direction if I'm leaving it at 1.5 or changing it to something else. I will get the commercial analysis just so we can have that discussion. And then I just need a date that we need to pass this on, which I think, to Mark's point, should be pretty soon.
I think that everybody's accepting it, at least a 1.5. So let's set it there, period. And then look at anything further later on.
Ms. Evans?
2022 is an election year. If you don't increase taxes this year, you're going to have to increase them next year. It's a small town. I think if you want to change the commercial ratio, which I have never in my experience seen a 1-to-1 ratio between residential and commercial. That's ridiculous. Commercial always bears more. But you're a small town and you have very, very few businesses. So you should do some consultation and some discussion with your business people before increasing the ratio. But I do recommend that you do that along with Mrs. Cookie. But if you pass 1.5 now, it's going to be a lot higher next year. So if you pass 1.85 now, next year you'll probably be at 1.85 again. Just saying, don't drop your momentum. If you, that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Anyone else want to let Nadia know how you're feeling about the 1.5 or higher? So she can look into things for us.
What about even going in the middle at like 1.7? Would that even be an option, or?
That would give you about $5,000 more.
Okay.
So that's the point I'm trying to make. We're not talking about huge money here on the residential side.
Okay.
But 76, I have I'm $76,000 transfer to capital is tight. It's one piece of equipment that goes wrong. It's one big property that doesn't pay. It's
Okay.
yeah, but I will get you something, like I can turn around some calculations pretty quickly because I have our assessment base. I'll just look into what the commercial properties are. Probably most of it is 189. When you guys say 189, is that the mill? Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yeah.
So I need to figure out if that's why our allowance is so high, because what looks like was happening before is that we were factoring the taxes in and then we were just assuming they weren't going to be collected. So, I have to take a look at that. But again, like if we were talking about a $200,000 surplus, I'd be saying, do what you want, lower it, but 76,000 is just a little too close to the line when we have so much going on. Like if there wasn't these capital projects happening that we had to contribute to, if we weren't on the last legs of our backhoe, if there wasn't a super old public works truck, we'd be in a completely different. I've heard roof things at the rec center. Like it's just, there's so many things happening that I worry about to leave it this tight.
Well, I'm in favorable of the 1.85 or 1.7, but I mean, we know it's only going to add a few extra thousand, but that's the, you know, it's not going to be favorable to some people, but I think they understand it all, but you know, besides talking to them and to know where we're at, and we know all these projects that we have coming up, right? So anything can go wrong there, and then where we have for that, but I guess we'll look forward to.
So the next part of my question was the water rates. Did you guys want to take a look at that document and approve it? Because at least then then staff can get that out.
I myself don't have a problem with that water rate. It's always our water rates. Some people complain about it, but it's actually quite low compared to others, and it's a valuable service. So, Councillor Mayor.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the water rates for sure. I'm a firm believer that if you use what you pay for, and you know what, if you use lots, you pay more, right? When it comes to water, that's controllable.
Councillor Park.
I also agree with the increase, so.
I'm on the same page. The SAGE report said that we were not charging enough to cover what water we were supplying. So it only makes sense to just, yeah.
So the other thing that we can do, because we kind of caught this halfway through the year, since we are going to be doing budget work in the fall, you can put your 2022 increase in January, which is what I would recommend. And then you have the whole year, because right now we're only getting the benefit of half the year, really, right? So this is a 2%. We can leave it like this. We can go more now and less later. Or we can just put the next increase in January, and then it's a 12-month benefit versus just half.
That sounds good. I think 2% now, and then work towards the next for next year.
Water stays. Thank you for that. That's one big piece of the puzzle. Okay, so I can get the information on the ratio and the different rates if we wanted to do 1.7 and a 1.85, so you guys can see what that is. I can turn that around pretty quickly. So what are your thoughts on then dates, and when is the next meeting that we could potentially, like, I think we need one more special meeting, and then we could pass it at the next council meeting, I guess, depending on when all that is.
Well, we have a next council meeting on Monday.
Too soon.
So then, yeah. So I don't know if we have a special meeting later on that week, or we do the week after, because then the next council meeting. We don't have to go to a regular council meeting to pass the budget. We can do it during the special meeting, correct? No. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, where's the schedule here? So I have a meeting the 7th and the 21st. So how about the week of 14th to 18th? Does that give you enough time, or is that too late?
Sam, if I wanted to get this on the agenda for the regular council meeting on Monday, when would I need to have the documents to you?
Tomorrow by noon.
Tomorrow by noon?
Can we give a little leeway to?
Yeah, like I won't send I'll put the packages together on Thursday, right? That just gives us more time. But yeah, no, for sure. Thursday.
I can do it for Thursday if we want to put this on the regular agenda for Monday.
Go ahead, Rosalie.
Yeah, so if it's on the agenda, but you don't have the information yet, the information can be forwarded after the agenda is published. So if council's happy with having it on the agenda, and Nadia gives us a comfortable date that council is also comfortable with, so if it's Friday or Saturday, as long as you're comfortable with having enough time to review it, and Nadia is comfortable with having enough time to prepare it, you can have it on the agenda with the information, the package, the report to follow. That would work.
I think that sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, so is it okay if I, instead of giving a whole budget package again for the next meeting, if I just do that top page that says, this is our scenario at 1.7, this is our scenario at 1.8, and these are our commercial scenarios, and then can they just pick one at that meeting and then approve the budget? Is that okay, or do they need the whole budget in there?
That's really what we've done in the past. We've been given like 1.5, 1.65, whatever the three numbers are. We go
Okay.
through it and then we pick what's
Okay.
what.
I can do that. Yeah, like because you guys are off on Friday, so I can do it for Thursday.
Okay. Okay.
Are there any other questions on the individual line items on the budget?
No, thank you for the report. Oh, Councillor Mayor.
Yeah, thanks for all the hard work. Honestly, that was a good looking budget, honestly. Thanks so much, eh?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
So are there any more questions or comments to administration? No? Okay. And the user fees will be brought up to be passed at the next meeting? Correct? Okay. So all I have to do now is just adjourn the meeting? Okay. So seeing that it's 5:46, I am, no other questions for administration. I am calling the meeting to an end. Thank you, everyone. Great discussion. And we look forward to the other reports from Nadia. We'll see you all Monday.
See you then. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care.
Take
Bye.
care.